T-W-I-L-I-G-H-T, and ain't no other pony trolling down like me. I'm Twilight Licious.
Hey, Pony.
This is JTH.
And Tails the Hero.
And-
Twilightlicious.
Yeah.
Or as I would say, I'm Tails the Hero-licious.
I never came up with
T-A-I-L-S to the H-E-R-E-O, and ain't no other brony react to fix like me. I'm Tails the Hero-licious.
and that's what you do when your freaking board and your Xbox doesn't work.
That was from my solo channel.
Anyway, we are on the final chapter of this messed up fanfic.
That Gray Racer, our good friend, requested, and Gray Racer, I'm gonna kill you next time I see you.
Anyways, here we go. The next morning, Sakura thrust open the door to her guest hut and motioned Mag over. He coughed and finished on the rest of his fruity juice morning cocktail before following her.
Fruity juice morning cocktail.
He wiped off his eyes and went over along the same familiar riverbed. He still felt rather embarrassed for falling asleep so early the night before while talking with Sakura. He flashed back to how he had barely even managed to finish their conversation before keeling over.
Yeah, it was a good night.
Yeah.
Why the fuck you sleep now?
I guess whatever magical stuff helps stuff the fertile tulips had coursing along themselves. It sucked a lot of life out of me. Oh well, I ain't gonna complain, especially since she made me breakfast and tried to explain more things to me this morning. Yeah, so Sakura was trying to explain to him.
I was being a jerk. Yeah, there's a storm going through the area, so his laptop is his Wi-Fi is being weird. Even on my iPod, is being a jerk.
Yeah, it's being a dick.
No, storm comes through. As I said, that's why I use desktops. Just give it a minute. Gray Racer is on his Steam. I'm gonna send my message on Steam.
Okay. Carefully made his way along the slippery rocks and broken down branches along the stream. Sakura disappeared from up ahead once again, jumping through the mysterious magical cave to the other side. Mac hesitated, just letting the water rush along the end of his hooves for a moment. He looked back at the empty baskets stacked into each other that Sakura had just carried. Whatever explanation she's given me only made me more confused. Blast it, he muttered, shaking his head. Goodness. I want to see... Okay. Goodness, so this Codius Hortus Siccus grows deep inside the Everfree, stretching out along in a big underground magical roots that look more like a fungus than a plant. But these are pretty horny little flowers that stick up every so often and ain't making a lick of sense. He picked up the buckets. Sometimes I just wish she spoke normally instead of those blasted rhymes. He sighed and ducked into the dark caves behind him. Behind him, he appeared in the same big clearing as the day before. You could see immediately, yet he could sense immediately that things had changed. Maybe the still sort of tone stretched over everything.
You put like.
The grass looked paler and shorter. The trees along the distance of the clearing appeared more foreboding, crawling around gnarly branches like a typical Everfree tree than picturesque stuff he saw before. Meg took a gulp. His eyes flew over. He couldn't see Sakura or the plant anywhere. He picked up the buckets and trotted over to the far right, where the trees and the green grass of the clearing met. He made his way over in a big circle. Sakura! Please, is something wrong? Meg asked. I guess I know that the plant, that she can become invisible, but now is not really the time. He stopped setting down the buckets on a mossy patch of torn branches. We're just feeding it and talking to it right now. As well as picking up the beads. Pollination is over. Or at least that's what Sakura seemed to say this morning. The situation has much changed. Our plants must be rearranged, said a voice from somewhere. It seemed to float about the air aimlessly like a leaf in a calm breeze. You said, wait, he didn't even begin to understand anything, wiggling his ears around as he laid on the ground. Please, Sakura, is something wrong with the plant? She is dying, dear Mac. Dying? Wait, what? Mac leaped upwards,
Oh,
jittering
man.
his hind hooves. He glanced all around, still seeing nothing but empty trees and empty grass. She was fine just a matter of hours ago.
Hmm.
Her roots suffered another attack.
Oh, roots.
Where in the hay are you? He danced around in place, looking like a dog chasing its tail. There is nothing to worry, my dear. We are simply right here.
They talking.
He blinked and looked over his shoulder and spied Zecora kneeling beside the massive plant. He tried nearby, standing over it, his eyes moving from the tulip to tulip as a huge frown crept over his face. The colors had started to fade, with an ugly dark gray tone overwhelming the pretty yellow and pink. The vines had dug into the dirt below. Overall, he saw it moving with far less energy. Zecora, he blinked. He couldn't believe it at first, but he felt like crying. Mac, now is not the time for tears. Zecora stood up and rubbed a hoof around his neck. And now is, in fact, the time for cheers. He slanted his head to the side. Sheer confusion just seemed to drip from his face. He opened his mouth, just letting it hang there. His eyes flicked between Zecora's smooth contact expression and the weak-looking tulips to their side. You made her every dreams come true. A special pollination happened just from you. Zecora stepped over to the side, tugging Mac several feet to the right of the plant. She is in the ways of the species of the flower. Reproduction destroys almost all of their power. Mac shrugged. She dies after mating? That sounds awful. Mac watched as Zecora hopped from left to right. She dug her back hooves into the ground as she wriggled her mane and tail. He didn't understand at all, scratching his chin. She smirked and she pointed straight downward. Mac's eyes followed. He took a deep breath.
How do you spell gardener?
G-A-R-D-E-N.
Okay. ER?
E-R. Yep.
Okay, I thought I had it right.
Just put garden and then E-R at the end.
I thought I had it right. I didn't know if I had it or not.
Who are you talking to, Craig?
I'll tell you
Or
in a
Gray
minute.
Racer?
I'll tell you in a minute.
Or Gray Racer, I should say.
Yeah, Gray Racer.
Alright then. He saw a patch of tulips forming underneath a huge tree a few feet from the older mass of flowers. These new tulips swaying side to side with the wind had brilliant stripes going up along their... the petals are red and yellow. Big red petals. Mac's eye slid over the flower back to his own big red flanks, exactly the same. He closed his eyes and held his head back. Zecora, are you telling me... Seriously?
Oh no.
Are you not happy to see your daughter?
What the
Daughter! Mac screamed out, bucking back his own hind hooves. You're lucky to have caught her, Zecora continued, grabbing Mac and pointing over the long tops of the nearby trees. Mac blinked as their bodies rubbed against each other. She held him up and motioned at a tail foreboding-looking oak. You have strong seed, better than any flower could ever need. Mac squinted. Oh, dear Celestia, he called out as he spotted more bright red tulips popping out far overhead the oak's tallest branches. I guess this new plant is gonna, well, spread all over the Everfree. You're correct, Zecora replied. It's a safe bet. Your daughter has already moved out for miles, indeed. Her
Wow.
reach shall envelop the whole forest with great speed. Tell him this is messed up.
I did. He thought it was interesting. The fucking daughter. This is weird.
Well, alright then, he said, sitting down. He buried his face in his hooves. I have offspring, kids, children, and they have petals. Oh, dear sweet goodness. What have I done? How could I let all this happen? He rubbed his temples and tried not to pant. What on earth will happen? Will I pay some more full support? Or something? Am I supposed to water all of them? Do I protect them if any pony tries to pick them up? He let out a low, long whine. What in the hay should I do? Mac, you silly, Zecora said, pushing his shoulder. No need to cry like a filly. Damn it.
Ah, yes, the screwiness of laptops. I use a desktop.
Okay, seriously, please stop that. We all know you use a desktop. He glanced over the tulips that he had pollinated the day before. He saw pile after pile of white beads that looked a lot like pearls, and somehow even shinier. And she stepped closer. The plant appeared to wither before his eyes as he moved, growing older in seconds as the normal flower would go through in days. He closed his eyes once again to think. He shivered. Zecora, what do I have to do about my petal-covered offspring? You need not be concerned with her, Mac, she responded, her head picking up the buckets that they had carried. She will expand all over by herself and will not come back. He nodded, sitting down once again. It all felt like way too much for him to take. She requires no gardening, not for a long while. You can set her on for her own for years. So please just smile. Smile, he repeated. He wished he had a thick glass of cider to wash his torrent of emotions down with. Listen to me and open your eyes now. Your money problems are finished, and this is how. Mac lifted up his eyebrows and held out his hooves. She shoved 3 huge baskets of jewel-like beads right in front of him. He looked down, seeing thousands of little Big Macs reflected back at him, and he grinned. He glanced over behind Zecora's shoulder, seeing the dirty black spot of the dirt where the original plant had sat. He felt content. He felt happy. Sure, he said. He paused. He headed over to the dirty blank spot, ignoring the baskets for a moment. He dug the ground a bit, leaning over. You know, Miss Flowers, I was never able to properly say goodbye, nor to properly thank you for such a wonderful evening. It's very ungentle, pony-like for me. He leaned even closer. So thank you. As a few golden magic sparkles went off within the dirt, he understood. He didn't have to say anything more. He didn't have to hear anything more. He pressed his forehead against the ground, and he smiled once again. Several hours later. After an impromptu welcome back party, the Apple family went through the long period of total elation, where Granny Smith and Applejack safely stored away their baskets of rare, expensive trinkets. They talked about investing in Apple Bloom's college fund. They talked about fixing up the barn. They talked about hiring even more ponies to work. They even talked about a vacation over in Hoopington.
Yeah!
Or that seemed like a distant dream only a few days before. Hoopington, what would that be the pony name of?
I don't know.
Someplace. All that died down after not too long as the ponies resumed their chores. Mac leaned out the window and gazed into the distance. With almost all the trees ruined or too close to be ruined, there seems to be almost nothing to do. Surprising how much farm life ends up just being bucking time. With that out of the way, he felt like an out-of-body experience. He took a sip of his iced tea on the counter and the table and besides his bed. He squinted out into the distance. He put a hoop to his eyes. Of course, I'm not going to see the Everfree like this. He ambled through his room and picked out his new telescope. He aimed it over in the direction of the forest, carefully adjusting the sights. He smiled as he came on the edge of gnarled, spooky-looking trees. He moved up and down. Nasty clawed things scurried through the trees. He slid the telescope and got a nice long look at the full moon. He shifted along the treetops over to a lake. He froze. He spotted familiar-looking red tulips stretching along the patches of grass beside the lake. He looked over to the right and saw them among a mass of maples. He looked over to the left and saw them upon a really huge pile of mossy black rocks. He traveled along the new path. The tulips dotted besides the gravel every few yards.
Crypto.
My goodness, he said, stepping back from the telescope. He picked it back up and placed it over into his closet. He leaned his body over the window again, taking in a deep breath. This means I've got some strong seed, or, strong pollen. He finished off his iced tea and prepared for bed. I wonder how Applejack will handle visiting her niece. He brushed his teeth and washed his face. I shouldn't think like that. Biology doesn't work that way. She's my plant, not the same as a fool, not in the slightest. But I can't feel proud, shouldn't I? He hopped into the sheets and pulled them over his head and made a pleasant sigh. Well, I suppose y'all can call it Everfree anymore, he whispered. Now it's gonna be Big Mac's garden. He slid to the side and fell into a long, deep sleep. The end.
What the fuck?
That was Gray Racer, no offense, but that was the most messed up fanfic I've ever read.
Just
That was weird.
I'll yell at him later.
Anyways, this is JTH. We will see you in our next fanfic reaction. Goodbye.